Hare Krishna. Question: why does ISKCON have such a sex-obsessed conception of bhakti? I was born and brought up in a Vaishnava family, and after I was introduced to ISKCON, I found that the ISKCON books and the ISKCON preachers talk more about sex than about Krishna. And many ISKCON brahmacharis look down upon grahasthas as if grahasthas are sinful. So rather than seeing the bhakti element, bhakti, which is the whole process that is followed, the whole ISKCON's process seems to me to be sex-centric rather than Krishna-centric. Why is that? Answer: firstly, we have to be clear about what bhakti means. Bhakti at one level means fixing the mind on Krishna and connecting with Krishna. Yes, that is definitely the central element of bhakti. But at the same time, there is also a contextual element of bhakti. It means helping us to free our mind from whatever can take us away from Krishna. So for example, if we read, say, some of the books written by the Madhva scholars, say Madhvacharya's followers, Vyasa Tirtha wrote some books. So when he, Advaita Kala, Nal and other such books, where he refutes Mayavad. Now they are so technical and so complex, the arguments within them, and you may not even, we see logic and scriptural quotation, and we may not see much direct Krishna over there. We may wonder over there, is it, why are you interested so much in bashing Mayavad? Why are you not interested in glorifying Krishna or Vishnu? Well, there in that cultural and intellectual scenario, the Mayavad was a big misconception for people, which often distracted their minds from being fixed on Krishna. So the acharyas at that time have a responsibility not only to provide people facilities for fixing their mind on Krishna, but also they have the responsibility of eradicating, crushing the misconceptions that can drag the seeker's mind, the devotee's minds away from Krishna. So that is why we see even in the Bhagavatam, especially for Parikshit Maharaj, who is on the verge of death and is fixing the mind on Krishna, so there are repeated references to the illusory and the binding nature of household life. There is the Bharat Maharaj section, which is very, very critical in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, very critical of householder life. And in 7th canto, Prahlad is also condemning materialistic household life. And like that, there are several sections in the Bhagavatam which do this sort of strong critique of household life. The purpose is what? The purpose is, the Bhagavatam is a book which is meant to help a person fix the mind on Krishna, especially a person who is about to die. And that time, yes, household responsibilities are responsibilities which have to be done. But when one is on the verge of death, then one has to fix the mind on Krishna, and I see that everything else is a distraction. So, both from the commentarial tradition and from the scripture itself, we see this principle that to fulfill the purpose of fixing the mind on Krishna, a subsidiary assistant purpose that is also needs to be served is to free the mind from the distractions that can take us away from Krishna. So we live in a hyper-sexualized culture. Srila Prabhupada started Krishna consciousness and preaching Krishna consciousness vigorously in America, although he was doing that in India also before that. And beyond that, what he did was, so when he started preaching in America and then he came back to India, he saw that at that time India was at least somewhat sexually conservative. Now India is also becoming hypersexualized with the media following and actually exceeding in some ways the obscenity that is there in the West. So because of now sex has always been a part of human culture, and it is the way humanity perpetuates itself. So in that sense there is nothing wrong with sex. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. that that which is the sex life that is not contrary to dharma, that is sacred, that is a way to experience God. So that is included within the Vedic culture itself. But uh, that and human beings, by their very fact that we have a biological dimension to our present existence, there will be a functional need and there will be a psychological attraction to it. That is fine, but one doesn't have to make it into a cultural obsession constantly. That means the human mind is going to think of sex anyway, but when we depict it aggressively everywhere, then that obsession becomes increased manifold. So in such a situation where people are constantly infatuated with thoughts of sex, so at that time for them to fix the mind in Krishna is difficult, and that's why to some extent at least it is vital that the the transitory and illusory nature of sexual pleasure be talked about, so that people can understand that there's nothing great in this. There's no need to get so worked up, so excited about these things, and therefore we can fix the mind in Krishna. The Prabhupada also writes in the Bhagavad Gita purport, the purpose of marriage is to make the mind peaceful so that it can be fixed in Krishna. So the mind is hyper excited about sexual pleasure. So within the precincts of dharma, one gets the opportunity to fulfill the desires, and then after the desires are fulfilled, one realizes that oh, there's nothing so great about it, and then one can move the mind towards Krishna. But in today's culture, rather than making the mind peaceful, so because the culture constantly keeps glamorizing sex in various ways, so people, rather than becoming peaceful, even when they are married, what happens is the mind keeps hoping, maybe I can get some other opportunity for enjoyment with some other partner, and maybe that enjoyment will be more fulfilling. This was not all that great, maybe that will be great, and that way the mind stays agitated constantly. And that's why it is the responsibility of the acharyas, following the scriptural and commentarial tradition, to help people counter the distractions that are keeping their minds away from Krishna. So the repeated references in Srila Prabhupada's books and in ISKCON classes to the transitory and illusory nature of sexual pleasure, they are meant to give us an intellectual impetus and to give us the determination, intellectual conviction, to turn our mind away from sex and to fix it on Krishna. So now it may happen that this can become excessive, and the whole process can become more negative than positive. Now Prabhupada actually gave so many positive alternatives. He had beautiful temples with very attractive deities and melodious kirtans, and then Rath Yatra festivals, and the whole culture offered a variety of engagements. Now if we see the Krishna consciousness movement, then if we see it only based on books, we may feel that there is excessive emphasis on sex. But if we see it as a complete movement, in the books there is constant reminder, and then maybe in the classes also the reminder that okay, don't get too excited about this. But then as a whole movement, it offers so many ways practically by the devotional culture by which one can fix the mind on Krishna. So it is not that there is just negative hammering, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. No, there is abundant facility for positive engagement that is there. And it is this positive engagement that will purify us and that will elevate us and that will free our mind from the infatuation. But if we are too infatuated, then we will not even feel inspired to get involved with the positive engagement. So therefore, to minimize that obsession, there is that infatuation, there is that reference to the illusory nature of these things. Now yes, if in some cases this has become excessive, then that is because of the specific individual teacher. Is a lack of balance in presentation, and this has happened unfortunately in ISKCON history, and it continues to happen in some places even today. That especially this whole principle is that whoever we are, we have to avoid letting the mind wander too much or dwell too much on sex, and we should get the mind to find its residence in Krishna. And that is the respect, this principle is irrespective of the brahmachari ashram and the grihastha ashram. So the principle is that we counter the distractions from Krishna and get the mind fixed on Krishna. But unfortunately, this principle is overlooked, sidelined, and then this whole discussion is reduced to a polemic between brahmacharis and grihasthas, where brahmacharis start looking down upon grihasthas because they say that okay, you are involved in sex. That is unfortunate and unformed reduction of what is essentially a devotional principle with a devotional purpose. So it's not that only grihasthas are distracted by sex, even brahmacharis are distracted. In fact, if they're not fixing their mind on Krishna and engaging themselves in properly in Krishna service, they may be more distracted, because it's possible that due to not experiencing that, they may be feeling more and more agitated about it. Of course, it's not, as I said, that experience alone does not remove the excitement, does not deflate the excitement, because one always keeps craving for other experiences in other ways, which one hopes will bring the pleasure that is glamorized, that is advertised, that is depicted. But anyway, the point is that if one is too critical, and if one finds that the presentation of bhakti is being reduced to a brahmachari grihastha sort of battle, then one can just withdraw from that setting and one can find other devotees who give us a presentation of bhakti which encourages and inspires us in bhakti. So all of us ultimately, rather than judging whether others are right or wrong, we may or may not be mature enough, learned enough, realized enough to know what is the consciousness and the motivation of someone when that person is speaking something. But we can and we should know what is anukul for my bhakti. So if some devotees, we find them hypercritical and we find that their association doesn't inspire us in bhakti, then we can always look for other devotees whose association we find encouraging, and we can take care and help our bhakti be nourished in their association. So that as a practical measure we can always take. So as a philosophical point, we're not negatively sex obsessed. Rather, the society, that the culture that we live in is sex obsessed, and because there is a distraction from, because that becomes a major distraction from Krishna. So to help people dwell on Krishna and relish his attraction, what is a distraction also has to be exposed, and that is a time-honored philosophical principle that expresses itself in a particular way according to the contemporary cultural scenario. And regarding if specific hypercriticality is there, then that is unfortunate. That is because of individual creatures' lack of balance, and one can, rather than judging that person as wrong, which often one may not be well informed enough to do, and even if one is, one may not be in a position to correct that preacher, it is better that one finds the association of devotees which can inspire one to take to bhakti more enthusiastically and become more devoted to Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna.